Welcome to Vitamin OC. I'm Joanna Weiss.
And I'm Whitney Gomez. Every week we bring you your recommended dose of civics and civilization in Orange County. Today we are honored to have with us Bethany Webb, a gun safety, criminal justice, and death penalty reform advocate. Bethany hails from outside the Cleveland area, spent most of her childhood in Long Beach, and has spent more than 4 decades in Huntington Beach, which we spent a lot of time on Huntington Beach in our first episode with Chris Floyd. Bethany has quite a story to tell, so we really appreciate your being here today.
So excited that Bethany is with us today. I'm in awe of the way that she has used her platform to really transform our community. I first met Bethany back in 2017 when we were protesting then Congressmember Dana Rohrabacher's.
Oh my goodness, that's going back a ways.
Yeah, going back a little bit. He was not holding town halls during the first Trump administration. And so we would show up at his office and protest. She always had the best sign. She carried a milk carton that said, "Where's Dana?" And that was how we first met. And she is a firebrand, and she is the co-founder of HB Huddle and a real inspiration to so many of us here in Orange County and nationally. And Bethany's so honored that you are here, and I welcome you as my friend and my fellow good troublemaker.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So you have become a fixture in the activist community here in Orange County. You have held countless rallies. You have knocked thousands of doors here. Mm-hmm. You're one of the most seasoned advocates in both electoral politics and issue advocacy. As early as 2013, you were featured in an article by the Orange County Register about your gun safety work and your advocacy in that area. And I know a personal family tragedy brought you into that space. And if you're comfortable sharing, I would like to ask you how you got involved in gun safety work.
So October 12th, 2011, my sister, this is Laura, this is her wedding picture 4 months before she was murdered in Orange County's biggest mass shooting to date. She was a hairdresser at Salon Meritage. She'd been there for 10 years. She was there doing my mom's nails. Laura and 8 other people were shot. A total of 8 died. So 4 of our friends, 4 people that Laura had worked with for 10 years, died that day. One of them, Victoria Buzzo, we had known for 20 years and was one of my very favorite people, a loud, hysterical Italian. We often argued who talked more, her and I. This whole survivor was my mom. What I learned that day was heartbreaking in so many ways. First of all, you find out that the news doesn't happen to other people. So often we look at the news, and I'm an empath, so I cry for other people. I literally saw breaking news and saw 9 people shot at that time, 6 dead. And it was a picture of Laura's work. I get my hair done there. I was there twice a month for the 10 years that she was there. I knew all the people that worked there. It was a big salon, so while 5 of the people that died worked there, I knew other people that were there. So I actually started repeating, how is this going to be okay? My thought was obviously with Laura. Laura was different than me in a lot of ways and the same in a lot of ways. She was quieter and didn't like politics. She used to have a yearly Christmas party, and she had 3 rules: no jeans, no beers in the bottle, and no talking politics. And I broke one of those every year. You can probably guess which one it was. But also, we were avid sports fans, Dodger fans, Raider fans, Kings fans. Both of our husbands rode Harleys, so we shared a lot of interests. We were sisters and friends. So what I lost that day was, I'm a Raider fan, as I mentioned. John Madden was once asked if he had a dime, who he would call, and he said Al Davis. If I had a dime, I would have called Laura. Laura was the person that would answer that call, and I knew if she could, would help me.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. You and I have something in common. And I told Joanna I was going to really try not to cry on this podcast. Okay. I think Laura died when she was 46. She did. I lost my sister when she was 46. Totally different situation. She died from colorectal cancer, far less dramatic. And, I was able to say goodbye and other things that you didn't have the luxury of. But I was a big sister. And are you the little sister?
No, I was her bigger sister.
You were the big sister.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have that in common too. So, to lose someone who is such a close person, it just blows up your family. It blows up your future. It blows up so many things. So I'm so sorry for you.
I'm sorry for you too. Losing a sibling is different. Like my mom lost a daughter. I'm a mom. And I always think, I don't know what I would do if something happened to my child. But something happened to a part of me, a big, important part of me that is never going to be full again. I still find myself talking to her and wishing that she could talk back.
There was an article in the Washington Post a week or so ago about this couple who had been in a drunk driving accident, and they lost both their children. They were teenagers, and they moved out to Joshua Tree, and they put next to their home a glass, almost like phone booth, and a rotary phone that was not connected to anything. And that's where they go to talk to their children.
Oh,
And I thought, what a brilliant way to let that energy out, because there's so many things you want to say.
right?
So I said to my daughter, we should go. No, go use their phone.
I'm sorry.
I apologize. Joanna actually
No.
gave me tissues because she was afraid that you and I would both be a mess. But talk to us about all that you have done to help other families avoid this tragedy, because you took that grief and you really turned it into something. So talk to us about your path from grief to being an activist.
I would be remiss to not mention the second part of our story, my activism. As I said, this was a big salon. So there were multiple people there that ran. They call my mom the sole survivor, Hattie Stritz. I call her the unsinkable Hattie Stritz. She was the sole survivor that was shot, but people ran everywhere. They saw him. He walked out. The last person he shot was in a car going into the restaurant next door, Patty's. It has a big wide open window. People were watching him shoot the last person. And brave people took down his license plate, called the police. He was arrested blocks away within 5 minutes. He confessed that the guns were on him. This was textbook open and shut case. This is textbook death penalty as life has it. One of the memories I have of Victoria, who died that day, and I were talking about, which I'm not allowed to do at the parties, we're talking about a execution of Tookie Williams, the last one in California. I have opinions. And from what I understand, capital punishment is racist in application, both if the victim is white, if the assailant is a person of color, those will get the death penalty more. So not just the person of color, but also the color of the victim. I have met, unfortunately, and some of the people that I love are women of color that have lost their children, and they get no attention because they're Black boys and they keep getting asked, were they in a gang? There's somehow a fault on the victim if they're a person of color. So that's part of my criminal justice belief. So fast forward to the trial. We meet with the district attorney at the time, Rakakis, and he says, I just want you to know that we're going to do everything we can. We know how much this hurts you, and we want you to hold on to that pain because we are going to make it better for you. We're going to get you closure. We're going to get the death penalty. It may take 10 years, but we're going to get it for you. So what I found out about this, first of all, was the death penalty doesn't take 10 years, not in California. Because if you can have a civilized society that's tied to the death penalty, we have appeals processes, which we should before the government decides to murder one of its citizens. So you're talking 20, 30 years of trials and appeals that the families are living through. I lived through 6 years of a death penalty trial. So I will tell you that the conversation I was talking to Victoria about, I literally said to her, I don't believe in capital punishment, but I don't know what would happen if it happened to somebody I love. And I found out. And I found out something that I rather like about myself, that it did not change, that I didn't want blood with the knowledge that there were innocent people, which there are, on death row. The shooting was about a custody. And so when asked why, and Michelle was a friend of mine, why he had to kill everybody, not just Michelle, he said they were collateral damage. My sister, my friends, people that I didn't know them, but I know their families now that were loved human beings, were collateral damage. Well, we have hundreds of people that have been convicted and sentenced to death that have then been found innocent. In California, to my knowledge, we don't have people because of our appeal system that have been executed. But throughout the country, particularly in Texas, we know of multiple cases where innocent people were executed. And when I think of sisters of people on death row, and they know that this person's innocent, they are collateral damage. Well, I know what collateral damage is, and it's not okay. We spend more money executing them than we do keeping them alive, because you have appeals processes, which again, you should, if you're a government and you're going to kill your citizens, you should make sure they're guilty first. It costs more to do that than it would be to keep them alive where they are of no future threat. I was Laura's protector. I was so angry. I think threatened to take my light away. The person that I have fought my whole life to be is somebody that has overcome. I've not had an easy life, but has overcome things and held tight to my belief in living a happy life, a life filled with light, which again brings us back to talking to the district attorney who said, hold on to that hate.
Like, what advice is that?
This is like what to me, and I've thought about this now since 2011, the worst possible advice you could give to somebody in this situation is to hold on to that darkness. To say you understand us, you can't possibly understand what you're asking of a human being. You're destroying them. You are asking them to destroy themselves so that you can get your gold medal, because you're not doing it for safety. You're not doing it for fiscal responsibility. You are doing it because district attorneys, that's the gold medal, capital punishment. We're so tough on crime, we're going to kill that person. That doesn't make us safer. When you think you support capital punishment for people like me, for the families, because you're doing us a favor. If you think that the person that is going to ever heal is going to be healed by the murder of another human, that's not healing. That is revenge. And revenge isn't actually that sweet when you're talking about murdering somebody as a revenge for murder, at least to me. Part 2 of my criminal justice.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so 6 years this took. Open and check case. The district attorney and the sheriff's department, the Orange County Register, did a ton of good reporting on this. Cheated. So they had been systematically for decades using what was called the informant program or the snitch program. If you understand the Miranda rights, once you have an attorney, you cannot be questioned without the attorney present. Loophole, illegal, but a loophole, would be to mic the cell, put in somebody that was already facing charges, offer them a deal to coax out from this person information they would not have given to a person of law. So this had been happening for decades. 2 people I want to mention by name. Scott Sanders was the public defender. And when I first met him, when he first came into court with the person that killed my sister, I don't mention his name. I do believe that a lot of mass killers, mass shooters, do that for notoriety. I'm not going to give him that. But he was talking to this person as if he was a human. For us sitting there, we sat 3 feet away from this guy, and he smiled at us and leered at us. And this is not a person that I hold compassion for. That's not what this is about. This is a very broken person that I don't believe should ever see freedom again. But I have to be better. We have to be better than a person on their worst day committing something unbelievable. Scott Sanders uncovered this trail. He was actually the public defender for somebody else that happened to have this same informant informing against him, and he started digging. And for 6 years, he dug and dug. We went to court 4 days a week and sat next to this person that had changed our lives forever. Personally, I watched the DA and the sheriffs lie on stand, perjure themselves on stand. The first 2 years, they are talking, and this is sort of coming to light as Scott keeps progressing. Then they're all attorneyed up. There were days where there's 50 attorneys in the courtroom because they are taking the fifth. The sheriffs,
Oh my goodness.
the district attorney taking the fifth. More evidence is coming out. The second person I wanted to mention by name is Judge Goebbels, my hero. At one point, the judge says, I can't trust the district attorney anymore to fairly prosecute this case. And he removes the district attorney from the biggest mass shooting in Orange County history.
Wow.
This is unprecedented nationally. This was appealed through the California courts by our then Attorney General, Kamala Harris, despite my strong objections. Because at this point, not only am I personally against the death penalty for moral reasons, but I'm pragmatic enough to understand it will never correct itself. So they lost. Javier Becerra, by then, the new Kamala had moved on to our senator, decides he's going to continue with the death penalty. So maybe another year and a half goes by and we're on this trial. And by the way, we've stopped talking for a good 4 years about Laura, about Victoria, about my mom, about Michelle and Christy and other Michelle and Luciana. We've quit talking about David, the people that died, and we're talking about an informant scandal for years while the families are sitting there not hearing about our people, not knowing what happened. My mom doesn't really remember it, and it was so traumatic that I still don't know exactly what happened that day because we never got that part of the trial. The part that I would really have liked to have seen. The judge, summer of 2017, found 1,800 more pages that they had not given to the defense. The judge threw up his hands and said, I'm ordering a court date. The judge announced, Judge Goethals, that he was removing the death penalty, that he could not trust either our sheriff's department or the district attorney's office in general, even to give the evidence to the new people that were prosecuting it. So all those years later, sitting by him, terrorized by this whole process, we ended up with 8 consecutive life without parole. And then I think 350 years or so because of all the enhancements for shooting my mom and then using guns on 8 or 9 people. What this means is what most death penalties should be, is he won't see the light of day, but we won't have to go to appeal after appeal. For me, did it work out the way you wanted to? No, because the way I wanted it to work out was never to be there, for my sister to be alive. So this is not a happy ending, but what it is a just ending for something that was not just to begin with. Judge Goethals said on that sentencing day, I saw this case come over. I saw the evidence. I was going to ask for the death penalty. And when I got it, I was going to sign off on it. But I can't trust this department to make it fair. That's my criminal justice part. And that was learned not by reading. And of course, I've read for years that this stuff happens, but I saw it happen in person. And if anybody wants to check this, you can go into Orange County Registers reporting on this. And they were there all the time. And every word I've just said can be validated through their reporting.
I remember it at the time. It was a big scandal. And we were just getting to know each other at the tail end of the trial. And I remember being shocked at the cruel way that they took a case that should have been open and shut and dragged you all through that for years and didn't listen to your wishes on the death penalty. Death penalty abolition work is some of my earliest activism. When I was a teenager in high school, I worked with Amnesty International. After learning about many of the things that you're talking about, it's not a deterrent. People don't commit mass shootings because they're in a right mind to be weighing the consequences. With California's 3 automatic appeals, it puts the families through so much, and it's more expensive. Then you have come into the morality questions. It's absolutely racist when it's applied. And where do we stand as a society if we think that having to kill one of our own citizens is the answer to something? We're so sorry that you went through that. The tragedy itself should have been enough, and not having been put through that incredibly botched trial, but I mean, and truly just corrupt.
Right.
And thank you for your part in uncovering that, because I know it led to a lot of reform.
We could argue that. Nobody was ever prosecuted. Not one person, not one DA.
I didn't realize
not
that.
One sheriff.
Okay.
A lot of them were retired in advance with big, hefty paychecks. No, not only that, but I should mention that 20 or so people that were convicted on various degrees of murder, not death penalty cases, murder, attempted murder, were later released because Orange County, our law enforcement, had used these informants illegally against them. And the one thing we kept saying as a family, why would you use it on this case? Because it was their mode of operation. This is what they did. How many people do we not know about? that are innocent, whose lives are forever changed because we're cheating on that. So I am on the executive board of Death Penalty Focus, which is focused on the abolition of the death penalty. I am a fan of our governor. Don't think he's perfect, but I think he's pretty good in a lot of ways. One of the first things he did in office, actually flew there for this to happen to Sacramento, was he took apart the death row. So right now, there really isn't a death penalty in California. The people are still getting charged. And should we get somebody here that had a different point of view, it could restart. And I would just ask people to think about who you are and what you teach your children. And if you teach your children that your actions should not be skewed by the actions of others, that there is a right and there is a wrong. If you know that there are innocent people that could be killed with your tax dollars, I would ask you to not support it. And also, if you're just worried about tax dollars, it will cost you more.
I want to talk to you about some of the elected officials with whom you've worked. What could they do better on these issues?
That's such an interesting question. I flew to D.C., was in the Rose Garden for President Biden's signature gun policy. With all due respect, yes, it was the best thing we've gotten in, they kept saying decades. It was a nothing burger. We got nothing. We didn't get background checks. We didn't get the low-hanging fruit. We certainly didn't get common sense things that everybody supports. We didn't get assault weapons. We didn't get universal background checks, licensing, things that NRA people support. So we need to get money out of politics. If you're taking money from the oil industry or the pharmaceutical industry or the NRA, you owe them something. And we're not getting the representation that we want.
You were talking about the nothing burger that was the Biden bill. California has some of the strongest gun safety laws in the country. What are we doing here correctly that you would like to see at the national level?
California laws are only as good as the laws of our borders. So if you go to Vegas or Arizona, when you come over that border, they want to know if you have any fruit, but not if you have any guns. California has some strong laws, and we have waiting periods and gun show regulations. We literally border states that don't have any gun laws. So we have to have national laws in order to have any success with gun laws. People like to point California still has violence, and Chicago has gun violence. Chicago is 30 miles away from Indiana, which has no gun legislation. Find me a blue state that has great gun laws, and I'll show you the state right next door that doesn't. And so all you have to do is go to that state. What I want nationally, first thing, is a background check for everybody. No one, in my opinion, under 21 should have a gun. I have two children in their 20s, early 21 and 27. They are still growing. Their minds are still growing. We don't let them drink before they're 21, but you can go and buy an assault weapon, a weapon of war. There is no reason for assault weapons. We need to have people strong enough to say background checks for everybody. I'm a loan officer by trade and a real estate agent. I have licensing tests every year to be a loan officer, and I have national background checks. So I don't hurt you by selling you a bad mortgage. Why can't we have licensing on a gun with a test to find out if you are somebody that should be able to have a gun? Every gun should be registered. Every person should be licensed. And you should have insurance just like you do on a car or a mortgage license or a real estate license or a hunting license or a boat license. This has 70 to, depending on the subject, 90% of this country, and we don't agree on anything else, agree on basic gun laws, which include background checks, no assault weapons, and licensing.
And I just want to point out that when you were talking about the kids and why no one under 21 should own a gun, gun violence is currently the number one cause of death of teenagers and children. And that is appalling. Probably three different causes. It's accidental gun shootings because we also don't have safe storage laws. We have children who have access to guns and death by suicide. Right. And then we have mass shootings or any kind of shooting. Kids have now become the number one victim of our failure to make good gun safety legislation. What do you say to people who say that the Second Amendment prevents restrictions on guns?
You can't yell fire in a theater. Okay, you have the First Amendment, so there is already laws on the books that this is not a free-for-all. From all of the amendments, there are obvious carve-outs to keep us safe. So when our children are taught from kindergarten or even preschool to stand on toilets so people can't see their feet, we are traumatizing our children from preschool. You watch these mass shootings at school and the kids say, oh, I always thought it was going to happen here. Because all our children believe that at any time in school, they can be the next one that is shot. No, the Second Amendment is not a blanket right to own. For right now, felons can't own guns. So it doesn't say anywhere in the Constitution and in the Second Amendment, felons, doesn't say that. But we've said, no, you can't have a gun. So there are a lot of other cases where there are carve-outs because common sense has said, well, you just can't have any gun anytime, anywhere you want one. No.
Okay, speaking of a lack of common sense, I read recently that in the big ugly bill, there is a change in the excise tax for certain guns, and that this was the foundation of the Supreme Court upholding the National Firearms Act. And that already in Texas, a lawsuit has been filed to challenge the National Firearms Act, which has been in force since 1934. How do you see this playing out?
So when it comes to the guns, the Supreme Court has shown they are not capable of running or being a separate branch of this country. And so what do I expect the Supreme Court will do? What they are going to take away everything that we have worked 50 years to do for this country. And right now, we don't have any of the branches. We don't have the judiciary. We don't have the Senate. We don't have the Congress. So it's time for activism. It's time for every single person to figure out how they can help and to do something, anything. If you have money, spend it. If that's the way you can do it. If you're on social media, you're listening to this, share your voice. I expect that the gun laws will be non-existent.
You said earlier that Laura didn't like to talk politics and that she banned it. But what would Laura think about what you're doing now and the way that you have advocated and honored her memory?
Think about that a lot. She didn't like talking politics at her parties. Parties were a joyous account were for her. And what would Laura do? In 2011, before she died, the presidential election for 2012 was already up. And Laura was angry. She was funny, but she was stubborn, and she had a heart of gold with some stubbornness. I think she'd be out protesting with me. She was so upset about the way people were talking about President Obama and the obvious racism that was happening. Yeah, I think she'd be out protesting with me. And I think wouldn't that be something?
Okay, I know the color orange is associated with lots of bad things, but we have a gift for you today.
Orange is the color of gun safety.
Yes.
There we go. Well, that certainly applies to you. So please enjoy your mug.
I will. I'm going to have a little sip off.
And I just wanted to say thank you so much for being with us today. I'm so proud to be your friend. We so appreciate your candor and your insight and your expertise and your passion. Thank you for all you've done for our community, and just really proud to know you.
You know, it's quite mutual. Thank you.
It's been an honor having you here. And before I start crying again, I'm going to thank our listeners for joining us for the recommended dose of civics and civilization in Orange County.
Please subscribe, like, and share our podcast, and we'll see you next time.